This is an interview with Dima Murovanni. Dima is one of the top European Jiu-Jitsu coaches around at the moment, and he's recently exploded onto the scene after coaching multiple people to winning ADCC trials across 2023 and 2024. Dima has also been engaged as the head coach over at B-Team Jiu-Jitsu for their training camp in preparation for ADCC 2024 and CJI. Hi, Dima. I think one of the main sort of things that will be interesting to hear from you specifically is where you've kind of exploded onto the scene the last year and a half, 2 years. I think not a lot of people realize what your background actually is or know much about where you came from. I know you started the sport quite late, actually, didn't you, in your sort of mid-20s?
Yeah, I started with 24, end of 23, start of 24.
Okay. And did you have any sort of background with any other grappling arts or any other sports at all before that?
Yeah, so let me go back to when I was 4 years old, 4 years old. I think that's one of my first memories, watching a Bruce Lee, not DVD. Back then we didn't have DVDs, a cassette, I think. I don't know if it's the right word in English. But yeah, this is one of my first memories. So I started to strike as a little kid. So my parents put me into Taekwondo. Yeah, it was not as I expected it. So I think I did it for 3 or 4 years, something like this. And then that was basically it from martial arts. I did a little bit of kickboxing after, but not too serious. And then I didn't do any martial arts from, I would say, 13, 14 until 23, 24. So it was actually 10 years.
Okay, cool. And what brought you to jiu-jitsu specifically there? How did you sort of find it?
Yeah, so you can call it early midlife crisis when I was about 20 years old. I didn't really know what I wanted to do because, funny story, I don't know if I actually told it anywhere, but me and my friends did a lot of like professional wrestling, not real wrestling, professional wrestling. So if you won a gold medal in amateur wrestling, that's cool. But did you win the WWE championship? No, no, just kidding. And yeah, we loved it. I fell in love with it when I was, I don't know how old, but it was in 2005. And this is pretty much what we did for a couple of years. So not many people know this about me, but my close ones know. And then I went to Los Angeles to train with Brian Kendrick, and he trained a lot of not future, like at the time, WWE champions. So I looked at it the first time from a professional standpoint, and I saw this is not really something that I want to do. And then I fell into kind of a hole where I was like, okay, damn, what should I do? I thought I want to be a professional wrestler, but this was only like an idea that didn't really manifest completely after my 20s. And then I thought about what makes my character and what I really love and like. And this was always martial arts. So an older Dima, like for martial arts is pretty old and pretty late, was thinking about where can I be still one of the best. So I looked at MMA because I always was a really big fan of watching the UFC and the older promotions. And then I did my first tryout at the MMA gym in Leipzig. And the striking part was relatively good because I did it already and I have a lanky body. So I'm gifted to it, I would say. I'm also Ukrainian, so boxing is in my blood. And then a little guy put me on the mat, like took me down, and I couldn't move. And I'm like, huh, wow, there's an aspect of fighting that you really never thought about that much. And then I was like, okay, I need to become the best in this first, and then I will go back to MMA. Think about this. I'm 20 something at this point, 23, I think, when I did the tryout. But yeah, this is just being naive. But this is how I am sometimes. I set very high goals, even if they are almost impossible to reach. And then I wrote a Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Leipzig. That's where I was living. And they didn't respond. I still have the message. So if they would have responded, I would have stayed in Leipzig. But at the current time, my girlfriend was living in Berlin, 2 hours away. And so I started Googling best gyms close to Leipzig. And one of the gyms was the BJJ Akademie in Berlin. So I write him. It was Robert, now one of my best friends and my professor that awarded me with the black belt. And yeah, he answered. So I was like, okay, I will move to Berlin, dropped everything in Leipzig, found a job, found an apartment and trained a lot day by day from this moment on.
Nice, nice. And I think it's quite interesting as well. You mentioned about the professional wrestling sort of background. That's a weird, it's something that happens quite a lot, I think, in the sport, is that people don't realize that there's actually quite a few connections with like professional wrestling. Quite a few high-level wrestlers actually have like a decent background in jiu-jitsu and vice versa. There's a few people that have sort of messed around with that in the past. Is that something you've noticed as well with your background when you were in professional wrestling? Did you have much exposure to jiu-jitsu then at all? Or?
The thing is, if you watch professional wrestling, the submission moves are not really high level. And I would say maybe I have a little advantage just because even if it's play, fighting's not real, like it's a choreography. You still are exposed to body contact, to lifting people up and stuff, but there people let you lift them up. So it's the opposite right here. People try to not let you expose your will over them, and that's the exact opposite. So it can be beneficial, but maybe not too much.
Fair enough. And obviously, fast forward then from when you sort of transitioned into jiu-jitsu, training at BJJ Akademie in Berlin. I know now you're the head coach there, aren't you?
In BJJ Akademie Berlin, the thing is they don't really have nogi. Even when I started, they didn't have nogi, so I just trained nogi in the gi, basically. And what I do there, I use the room, just literally the room, to experiment with my systems, experiment with my training methods, invite very good people from around, and mainly training with Linus. So Linus is like, I would say, my only student that started with me and is still with me because I only had two that really committed into jiu-jitsu. The second one, not many people know of him. He's also really good, but he's smarter than us. So he's doing philosophy right now. uh, but he was also pretty good and had good roles with trials medalists, I would say I saw. But yeah, Linus was the only one that stick to it. And this is pretty much what we do at the BJJ Academy. It's more experimenting. Everybody who wants to train can come and train, but I'm not really running official courses there. It's more unofficial, unofficial. And we have a group where everybody can join and then come to train with us, because I have like quite often people that come to Berlin wants to train with us. And then I tell them, okay, I will add you into the group. You can come and train with us. And that's pretty much it. I would consider myself more of the head coach of B-Team, especially after the next year, because I will be there from, I think, 4 to 6 months. And after that, I think I could say officially that I'm more the head coach there. But still, I don't want to say it right now. So right now, I'm just pendling pretty much. I'm an international coach. That's what I am.
Fair enough. No, that makes sense. And I think that's sort of taking a step forward as well. That connection to B teams all started with Jozef Chen, didn't it? And I think, from my understanding, it was when you went to B team originally just to train there, wasn't it? And you sort of like cross paths with him. What sort of brought you two together? Because obviously you work quite well together, you know?
Yeah. So actually, this is what a lot of people think, that I have the connection through Jozef. But if you look originally to it, he has a connection through me. Because the first time I was in B team, it was in January 22, and I was there for 3 months. So this was right after my 2-year layoff because of my injury. And I wanted to get back immediately because time's running. How old was I? 29 by that point. And so I got my money, all that I had, went to B team, trained there. And then at the second month, in the end of the second month, Jozef came. And he was just a 17-year-old blonde kid. And before we all knew how good he actually was, we just connected with each other just because of our love to jiu-jitsu. So he was new, and I was immediately like, hey, if you want to do something with us, just join, because he was new, he loves jiu-jitsu. And then I realized through his PC, like through his, I don't know if it was a MacBook at this time, that he has like 20 open tabs of flow grappling. And then I'm like, oh, damn, I show him my MacBook with also like 20, 30 open tabs of jiu-jitsu content. And then we basically just watched each other's videos, talked about jiu-jitsu, and this is how we connected. So we pretty much connected based on our understanding of jiu-jitsu and that we both actually loved it. I don't know many people that studied that much, especially at this point of time. And yeah, this is how we connected. And then afterwards, I just realized I'm not built to be an athlete, especially right now. And he needed someone to guide his training because he was already technically one of the best in the world, you can say. Right now, you can definitely say it. But he still struggled with training structure because he loves training so much. So it's harder for him to take it from a performance standpoint because you need to put the fun a little bit away and do what you need to do. So when I realized that I'm definitely not a competitor anymore, or I don't want to pursue this this way of living if I can't train properly, it was at the same time where he was like, hey, maybe you could help me. And this is how everything began. And after that, I got a bit more known. And then I would prepare him for ADCC regardless, right? Or for CJI at this point, we didn't know. So the owner of B-Team knew me already because I was there. We connected quite well. And especially after the trials win from Jozef, we connected again in Bali. And yeah, so he asked me if I want to run the camp for everybody because they need a head coach. They are all great athletes. They're all great coaches, but you need someone that unites everything. And they had not so good experiences, or not. I can't say that because I don't know what happened, but for them, it was a better way to split and go to their own thing. And I think I symbolize like the middle thing. I'm a coach, I'm a head coach, but we are also connecting with each other. And I understand that these are very talented people. And you need to find a mix between being a coach and also being someone that understands that they need to do what they need to do. And yeah, so everything worked out. And I hope it will work out in the next years like it did this year.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. Is that from an outside perspective, that's one of the things that made B-Team unique to begin with. But then, like you said, also maybe is a gap that might need plugging. Is originally they were a group of people that trained together. They were all elite competitors, but it's difficult to really, like you said, sort of unite everyone under one focus. Everyone's doing the same thing, the same approach. It's difficult to do that when you've got five, six, and obviously a dozen more people competing at a high level and no one really overseeing everything. Um, I know obviously you were brought in to do the B-Team camp for ADCC CJI. Could you speak a little bit about how you structured that, like how you sort of got the best out of them?
Yeah. So this is the difficulties of being a coach. Many people say, oh, everybody is a coach. No, you talk about instructors. Instructors come in and they show a move. Being good in jiu-jitsu and understanding jiu-jitsu is not something that a coach can have. It's an obligation. So this is not the most important part about being a coach. The most important part is to get the individuals to their goals as good and as fast as possible. So in order to do this, you need to not only know jiu-jitsu, know a couple of moves or know all of the moves, you need to understand how to make them reach it faster. And everybody has a different way that helps them. So you need to understand humans pretty well, in my opinion, and you need to understand the individuals. Then you only need to understand the strength, weaknesses, and rules of the tournaments that you go into. And then you also understand which techniques they need and which preparation they need. I think we are overvaluing technique in jiu-jitsu. Like we have the idea that if you know every technique, that you can beat everybody that does know the technique, but this is skill. There's another thing, this is performance. If someone is just better than you in one thing, but you are better than him in 100 things, but he can force it because his speed of reaction time is faster, you will never win against him. But if you put him in different positions, maybe you can win there, but try to get there against someone really good in performance. So this camp was about performance, not about skill development. But the challenge was that, in my opinion, some people had areas where they still need to develop some skill. So this was the challenge. And also I had to structure between the ADCC and the CJI rule set. So a typical day would look like this. I come in, we do some, I call it tools. It's pretty much just positional sparring to warm up. we do it in a low heart rate. So I needed to first explain the heart rate model that I'm trying to emphasize. And it's nothing crazy rocket science type of science like you want to be in zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. This is all pretty good, but let's start with the basics. And the basics are we need to understand how to roll light. We need to understand how to roll medium. We need to understand how to roll hard, because all of the three zones have their benefits and downsides. And good competitors usually are good at the highest zone, but not good at the lowest. And this is where you can actually develop skill. And the opposite. Very good technicians that are not great competitors are good at the lower heart rates, but not good at the higher, right? So after we understood this, we did some tools to warm up, to also strengthen the essential skills that I think are important. Then we did 1 or 2 techniques, nothing crazy. We mainly looked at not only staying safe in entanglements, but actually engaging and trying to pass from there. I believe this is something that helped Nicky Rod and J Rod a lot. Can we pause it for 5 minutes? So where did we stop? Sorry, I had a delivery of water. I'm very big on good water. So now I have it. Okay, so let's continue with the structure. And so I still try to add some new skills, but it was nothing crazy. And yeah, my dog's going crazy. And I also want to add, for example, for J, rumble passing. But I didn't do this in the normal training schedule, like at the 12 at the noon classes. So I told him like a couple of times, come at night. And then he would come at night, and then we would have like a private where he just repeats some sequences that would help him develop that skill. So for example, Jay is someone that he doesn't like to drill like every day for 1 hour. Same with Nicky Rod. And I think this wouldn't benefit them to do it this way. It would benefit them way more if you just give them a few ideas and let them think, let them explore it in sparring. And then usually they come back and ask a lot of questions. Example, Nicky Rod asked so many questions, not only me, but everybody that he trusts and that he thinks is technical, because he wants to benefit and learn, but you need to let them do it. And this is, for example, also like something that the coach needs to understand. Like you can't just push through with the method that you believe is the best. You can just see which is the best, and then you need to adapt to it, because every human being is different. We are not raised all the same. We are not raised in the same place. So this makes it a bit more difficult than people think. So and after the technique part, we do 2 techniques, then we do some positional sparring, and then we do some normal sparring. And then after that, we have sometimes a discussion period, but usually more if we try to develop skills. So there we didn't have it too much. But for the next camp, where we want to develop skills rather than performance, we will have more discussion periods. And this is something that Joseph taught me. And I think this is very important.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think that having the ability to sort of like break something down with a coach, or even just with your peers as well, with other competitors, is really, really valuable. And obviously in a room like B-Team with that much knowledge spread out across people, it's so good to get everyone together. Like you said, sort of working as one unit, you know. Can I ask as well, because you mentioned the difference in skill and performance, and I think from my perspective, again, watching the event, Nicky Rod really kind of like exemplified that difference, where he's always been a highly skilled competitor. And I feel like even in the previous ADCC runs, he's had great performances, obviously. But the sort of like turning point, the difference at CJI is that rather than just doing well at everything that he normally does, he really had like a solid game plan that he followed from A to B to C, and then got the finish in every single match. And I think the the technical side, obviously, I can't speak to whether he's made any huge improvements, but he looked just as good, if not better than ever. But the performance was huge. That difference in doing what he wanted to do. Is that something that you sort of worked on with him specifically, or?
Yeah. So the thing is about results. If people look at results and they see that something is better or worse than before, they can't accept it. People need to know, why is it? Sometimes it has no explanation, sometimes it has. And this is also the hard side of checking if a coach is helpful, because you can make the argument that a lot of my athletes could win without me, even if they did it before on paper, but you could make the argument, and it could be a valid argument. You could do the opposite. Like you can say that people that shouldn't win or shouldn't perform well. If they perform well, oh, okay, it's because of the coach, or it's not because of the coach, depending on if you like me or not. So I can only give you a guess why he looked so good, because I can't claim anything. They are all very, very good athletes. But in Nicky Rod's case, I think he already was a good performer always. So what helps him more is the training for skill. And I think the confidence in the skills that he acquired made him even more dangerous. And also a big thing with Nicky Rod is great structure. So this was the first time where people had to spar him. Like usually he has a hard time of finding sparring partners. This time, if I tell the people go there, they go there. Even if they look at me like I will kill you, but they will go there and they will listen to me. So in this camp, he was perfectly prepared. He always gets better technically pretty fast. Like I think a critique about him was that he's not technical back then, but he only did jiu-jitsu for 1 year or 2 years. So he gets better every year. Even without me, he got way better when I arrived there. His technical ability shocked me because he was really, really technical, and I could even pick some stuff up that I used for especially my passing systems. But he's never stopping asking questions, and he always wants to improve. So I believe the time when we are all together, like you said, we have such a technical room, and I'm like let's say if we talk about code, let's say I'm the main developer, and we have very good developers around in the room, okay? Like we're an IT company, and one developer is really good in doing Java. One developer is very good in blockchain development, and they are better than everybody else. One developer is very good overall, but under stress, maybe the developer can develop, okay? So what I do, I gather the information and I spread it out. We have like Camp 1.0. So now I spread out the Camp 1.0 and I get back results from all the developers because everybody develops something else. And then based on the developments, I can do a Camp 2.0. And this is how I spread it out again. And then we start again and again. But also what I do is looking around the world and looking at trends and predict which data will be the best. So this is how I also program myself at home or at the BJJ Academy. Then I test it, give it to good people because I have access to high-level people. Sometimes in sparring, I can also try to do it on them. And if it works, I know, okay, they are way better than me. So this must be good data. So now I give it out to them and then they will report back to me with even better data. Sorry, I drifted. So with Nicky Rod, the main thing I think was structure and that he had enough training partners and that he could power himself out. So every day he had a meaningful training. It wasn't like sometimes he doesn't have training partners, sometimes he has. Even if he doesn't have them, I will make 4 to 5 people line up and battle him. And by the end of this camp, Nicky Rod was, in my opinion, the best Nicky Rod ever, and maybe even the best grappler at the current time. So I really want to see him against the best of the best this year, and I think this will happen. So we can see where he stands, but I believe very, very high.
And I think you're spot on there that that performance really like solidified it for a lot of people. He's been one of the best around for years now, pretty much since he started the sport. But that performance at CJI really sort of made a lot of people question sort of where he originally sat in the rankings. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, he's always been someone that people have considered top 5, top 10 kind of thing. But that sort of like domination of everyone one after the other and doing the same thing, doing exactly what he wanted, and then the Pixley performance afterwards as well was phenomenal. So I mean, I think, like you said, he has hit a new level in my opinion as well. And then I think the same also applies to J-Rob as well. You mentioned obviously working on the rumble passing with him, and that's something that we saw quite a lot at ADCC. For people that aren't quite familiar with it, could you just explain sort of like the concepts behind what you call rumble passing?
Yeah. So originally, I defined rumble passing as a passing style where we mimic the rules of wrestlers when they engage. And the goals are to force our partner supine from a seated position or get to the back from the seated position. You can also pass, but these are the main goals. And if you stay with these goals and you have the rules of hand positioning, stance, head positioning, elbow to lower body connection, distance, then it's very, very hard for someone to entangle into you. Because imagine having a stance like a wrestler. Now you need to beat the hands, then the head, then the hips. If you stand like a traditional jiu-jitsu competitor, the legs are more present, so you can attach way easier. And for people that are dominant in the wrestling position, this passing style is perfect because now your partner can't stand up because you will take them down, so they need to play guard. And if they can't stay seated where they can actively scoot into you, it will be even harder for them to connect into you. So it was very, very important for me to not only be safe in entanglements for Jay, but also entangling with an advantage. So for example, into his split squat system, because he's really good at the split squat. And we also worked a little bit on this, but he was already really good at this. And I can go more into the technical aspect, like he does something that many people would say it's wrong, but it's actually the rightest thing ever in Nogi. He just does it based on intuition, but we can talk about this later. So this is pretty much rumble passing. And me, for example, I'm not that athletic and I don't like to stay in the stance. I don't like to go away, disengage and go back in. I use like something that I call rumble passing 2.0, and it's more about getting into the entanglements with the rules. And I dropped actually an instructional today on my Patreons, like a specific instructional, only a short instructional. So this is why I'm using rumble passing for both ideas. One, if someone doesn't want to stand up and you mimic like the rules that wrestlers use that are way more advanced than we are in the basics. And with the basics, I mean the rules that I talked about. And also you can use it to engage on your terms into a guard that you want to play. And then it's very, very hard to play from the bottom.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think that is what sort of really exemplified J Rod's run as well, is that he was able to win pretty much all of those, well, obviously not all, but the vast majority of those exchanges where he was on top and someone was playing guard. He was in control the majority of the time and really putting people under pressure and wearing them down. That's something that I think is kind of unique for that rumble passing approach, because from a sort of like historic overview of jiu-jitsu, a lot of the time the guard player is considered to be the one favored, you know what I mean? And a lot of decisions, if you're playing guard and you're on the offense compared to someone who's not able to engage as well, then you'll win that decision even though you're on the bottom. Whereas I think taking that approach that J-Rod, if you watch J-Rod's ADCC run and take that same approach, you should win the majority of those decisions, even if you can't pass or can't take the back. You're in control of that battle. And I think that obviously helped his run as well, because from a sort of mental point of view, if you're the person on the bottom and you know that you're losing this match, you get forced into sort of riskier positions, riskier transitions, and then you end up cleanly losing points and getting past that sort of thing. So is that something that you consider as well, is more the sort of tactical approach to different rule sets as well?
Yes, and this goes more into like the performance training and not the skill training, because it's about the things around jiu-jitsu, right? It's still jiu-jitsu, but it's more the basic, the core. So you decide if you want to go into a jiu-jitsu exchange or into which jiu-jitsu exchange you go. You will decide it. And actually, like, this is nothing new. Well, I think the only new thing about it is the system, how I put it together, because I think I can explain it in a sense that people understand it easier. But if you want to look at great rumble passers or great passers in general, where I have the concepts from, it started everything with Isaac Michel. The first time I was at B-Team, like when he started wrestling a lot, right? So he just did the same passing style that he used in wrestling, right? Not one-to-one what I show, but this is probably my biggest inspiration. And then after that, you can also look at different people. I didn't look at them creating the system, but Elder Cruz is pretty good at it. And Dorian is really good at it. So you can learn a lot from them. But the main technical things that I got from this was actually watching Kyle Dake. And Kyle Dake is one of the greatest American wrestlers of all time. And he has a DVD where he talks about single leg entries. And the first thing he talks about is stance. And this is where it clicked. Like, we as jiu-jitsu people, we talk about stance, but not many people do it. Like, many people go in there and say, okay, this is a Toriando pass. You want to grab this, you want to do that, and then you get passed, right? If you just try to mimic it, you are not understanding the concept of it. If I would rather explain you the concept of staying safe, applying pressure, passing and solidifying the pass, you will get there way easier, because if you understand that you don't need to just mimic techniques like a mirror, it will not work like this for most people. I think John Danaher does a really great job. This is why he was one of the people that innovated a lot of stuff. It's not much new things that he showed. He has stuff that he invented also and innovated, but a lot of it, what he shows, was previously there. But how he explained it, this is what the coach needs to be. You need to make sure that your student or athlete understands what you want them to do. And when I watched Carl Dake, he did it in the first sentence. Like, it was about single leg attacks, but the first thing he talked about was stance. And then he talked about a square stance and a staggered stance. And previously we were thinking that the right stance is the staggered stance. But every stance has its benefits and downsides. So the square stance is way harder to entangle if you have the hand position, the head position. And he talked about this in the sense of the wrestling stance. And this is where I was like, damn, I have to stop watching jiu-jitsu guys passing. I need to start watching wrestlers engage. And if you apply the same rules, because you understand the concepts, you will get it. And I'm very big on concepts rather than techniques. So I cover and charade the concepts in techniques when I teach. And I think with one concept, you gain 1,000 techniques. But with one technique, you gain one technique and maybe non-concept. So this is what I'm big about. And I think this is what I can do good in the understanding of, or in my understanding of jiu-jitsu.
And I think that is a spot on sort of analysis as well, is that in jiu-jitsu, there's not a lot of people that focus on that stance aspect. It's not something that is really, like you said, people know about it or they talk about it, but it's not something you'll see replicated, even at the highest level, that often. And it's quite funny, the two examples you mentioned, Dorian and Elder Cruz, are both people that are known for their wrestling as well. And I think, was it Chris Wojcik and Felipe Costa, that match at ADCC, that sort of like, I think is another example of someone being able to win from top without sort of like engaging on their terms. So for you, looking back at the performances from ADCC, is there anything that you picked up either from the B team guys specifically or from other competitors moving on to, like you said, training camp 2.0?
Yes, yes, I did. And the main thing that I picked up was from Owen Jones. So he did something in the camp to someone really high level that I didn't know was possible. And then after that, we looked at it and it was quite genius. And I believe after that, I saw one or two guys that do a similar thing, but pretty much based on this, what he did, I started playing with it immediately. And I played around it for now 4 to 5 months, maybe even longer. And I think we created a really nice system. So sometimes I invite people that are way better than me. I talked about this already. And this is something that works even on them. So if I know that I have something that works on people that crush me completely in every other sense, what they do, because they are the best in the world, right? This is something. So then I give it to them, and then I can't do it anymore to them. And then they report back to me with better stuff. And then we have 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0. So now I already gathered a lot of data. And I believe that we have something really cool for the next skill development camp. And this will be a bit different from the performance camp because it will be way more relaxed. And we will look on skills rather than trying to win something. At least for most people, because I believe we will also have one or two great matchups. So maybe we need to pair it. And again, this is something that is hard to do as a coach. Not everybody has the same schedule, so you need to combine the camps. But I think we will master it. And yeah, Owen Jones, he's my #1 innovator, and I'm very thankful that he's around me. And the thing is, I could say all the names because I pick up everything from everybody. Like, for example, Joseph, you just need to ask him one thing or show him one technique and he will spit it out way better. It's like a technique machine. You show it to him and he just spits it out better. And you're like, okay, cool. And you can do it unlimited times. Just depends on how much time you have. So yeah, and obviously we have Nicky Ryan. We have so many great people in the B team. We have Ethan. And again, it's like being a programmer. Everybody is good at something. So your job as the leader is to recognize where they're good at and where they are good at explaining and also innovating. So if I have something that is good against butterfly ashi passing, I will give it to Ethan because he's a master of it. And he comes up with a solution immediately. Even if I give him a solution, he will come up with a better solution. So I take it, I understand how to teach it to everybody else, because maybe I can do this better than him, maybe not. And then I will do it. And then we are back at open sourcing. I give it, you give it back. And yeah.
Yeah, and can I ask, when you mentioned something that Owen Jones sort of did in that performance, I don't know if you're willing to share it too much, but I think a lot of people obviously took notice of that performance against Gabriel Souza. Is it perhaps the shotgun armbar that he pulled off against him, or is it something you're willing to share, or no?
It's not that. I can say it's a submission, and I can say it's a pretty devastating submission, and I believe it's one of the strongest. Like, I do a lot of seminars, and I try to spar with all of the people that come. And every time I do it, even against relatively good people, they are surprised what it was, because it's something really basic, but not so basic. So it's like reinventing the wheel pretty much, or not, or it's just a wheel. Like, you can decide. But I want to teach that. So I developed a system around it with some stuff that I think could be pretty good. And even if the thing that I believe is good will not help anyone in the B team, the positions that we will work it from and the understanding and the concepts. So again, I will use it as a charade, the technique for concepts. So even if they don't understand or don't want the technique, the concept will be there, because concepts works for everybody and techniques work for individuals. So it will get better in the skill department regardless. And hopefully the technique will be very good for all of them, but even if not, the concept will.
Cool. And you're exactly right. I think the best coaches do focus on spreading the concept and then sort of like diluting that down to one technique and getting it across to people in a much more digestible way. Because it's always difficult to teach a concept as a concept, to go through something without having a concrete example of how it works and how it functions, sort of thing. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to go through with you, though. Really, I mean, the only other thing I think I wanted to mention was with the CJI 2 camp coming. I know B-Team are obviously going to field the team into that tournament as well. Is that something you're going to take part in, running the training camp for that?
Of course. So I will do 2 training camps the next year. One of them, I really want to do a skill development camp, because I believe this will help everybody out a lot, especially with the room that we have, so we can max it out. And then the second camp will be the CJI 2 camp, and it will be a battle royale, right? So we need to be prepared, and we will.
Awesome. And before I go then, is there anything else that you want to say, or anyone that you want to sort of give a shout out to or give thanks to or anything like that?
Shout out to my sponsor Rollbliss, and go to my Patreon. I have so much stuff on my Patreon, and I think it's over 120 videos right now with 6-7 specific instructions. So if you want to learn the systems, or if you even just want to watch the B-Team camp, I recorded most of it on my Patreon. Check it out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time today, then, Dima, and have a nice evening, all right?
Thank you, man.